Welcome, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. I am Justin Lehrer from StopWaste. I want to thank all of you for joining us today for this webinar. I've been working with the business community in Alameda County for over 15 years on projects that reduce waste and improve sustainability, with a particular focus on packaging. And I'm excited to be hosting today's webinar highlighting new solutions for takeout foodware. We're recording this webinar and it'll be posted to our YouTube channel. So if you can't stay for the full time, or if you want to review some of what we discussed later, it'll be there. And at the end, we'll be sure to give out the links, contact information, and all the other relevant details. We'll also post the URLs in the chat as we go today. So I'm going to take a moment and go over what we'll cover today. We want to give you a brief overview of the foodware packaging decisions that food service folks, like many on this call today, are confronted with, especially with a focus on takeout and delivery. We also want to go over some of the problems with disposable options, which is currently the default. But we want to spend the bulk of our time hearing from 3 commercial services already operating here in the Bay Area about solutions that are built on durable, reusable foodware and how those could work for your business. We'll keep the presentations pretty short at the beginning so we can spend most of our time answering your questions and getting your feedback. That brings me to how we'd like to manage comments and questions. Please use the chat to type in your comments and questions as they come up. In addition to myself, we have a few other team members helping to manage the webinar. Stephanie, Alma, Mary, and Ben, give a wave. They're going to all help triage your questions for the panelists or answer them directly and post resources into the chat as needed. During the discussion, you can also raise your Zoom hand. So if you'd like to speak, instead of putting your question in the chat, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand and our team will unmute you when they can and invite you to speak. Our mission at StopWaste is about waste reduction and sustainability. Single-use food serviceware and packaging is ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and it has surged during the pandemic. There's a lot of issues with it, but the most obvious is probably litter and pollution-related issues. Also, as we know from collection service providers and processors, haulers, that disposable foodware is a real problem for recycling and composting facilities where single-use items tend to contaminate the material stream. But what's likely most important for businesses is that single-use food service items are a recurring high cost. It's an ongoing cost. And I also want to mention the customer experience. Many customers don't like to eat from disposables, and there's high concern among consumers about litter and the eco-impact of disposables. But there are alternatives to disposable foodware. What we'd like to present and discuss with you today are reusable foodware options that are already operating here in the Bay Area. They can work for takeout and delivery, events, institutional kitchens, and other applications. Before we dive in, I'd like to invite everyone to take a poll. We want to know the top reason that you're interested in reusables. Is it cost savings? Is it environmental benefits? Maybe improving the dining experience? So we're going to launch a quick poll and take a moment to enter your results, and then we'll share them out. There it is. While you all look at the poll, I'll just share that from our perspective as a public agency, it's a key objective to shift away from disposables and rebuild a culture of reuse in Alameda County. We're interested in building up our reuse infrastructure so that reusables are a common and convenient option for dining in and takeout or delivery scenarios. We plan to do this with education, like today's webinar, also with technical assistance and funding so that we can help launch pilot projects around the county. Today is just an early step in that process, and we look forward to your questions, feedback, and ideas that can grow into actual projects. Let's see, it looks like most of our attendees have voted, so you're still viewing questions. Maybe I'll give another moment and then we'll share results. Here we go. So top reasons you're interested in reusables, reducing waste and litter comes out on top, it looks like, but also climate change and environmental benefits are there as well. Cost savings is one that we're going to talk about as well, because one of the really fascinating things about reusables that might not you might not know without seeing the data is that reusables always result in cost savings. 100% of the examples we have seen, there's factors that influence that, and it can be a matter of time until that goal is reached. But in every case study we have, the reusables end up saving money for the business. Okay. So before we dive into the reusables, let's take a look a bit more closely at disposable foodware options. You may recognize some shown here from your own operations. On the left, we have some examples of plastic foodware, sometimes labeled recyclable. For example, clear plastic clamshells, like the bottom left, are very common. And little condiment cups, like the one next to that clamshell, and the flatware, that's everywhere. You know, every meal you get takeout often comes with these things. On the right, we have some compostable packaging options. It may seem like we could use compostable foodware or fiber paper-based foodware as a solution, and they do continue to evolve and improve, but it's not a clear win. There's definitely a bunch of challenges with them. Let's take a moment to look at both solutions and what the issues are. So first, looking at the quote unquote recyclables. The vast majority of these items are actually not recyclable, practically speaking. People think they're recyclable because there's chasing arrows on them, there's all kinds of labeling on them. Some may even be collected with the recycling in your community, but there are simply not robust end markets for these materials. They often also end up in the wrong bin, such as the green bin for the compost and food waste. And when this happens, you risk contaminating a much larger stream. So when these items are placed in the recycling or the food waste, and that gets into a larger load, if there's food contamination or other material that shouldn't be there, it risks impacting the recyclability of the whole load. For individual businesses, contamination in the recycling bin can also lead to violations of the county's mandatory recycling ordinance and possible fines. Because food contamination makes recycling challenging and organics are banned from most landfills, composting all food serviceware might seem like a good option, as I mentioned. Compostable foodware, it has some benefits and it has some challenges. First, I want to note that there's fiber-based compostable packaging, there's compostable plastic, and then there are also bio-based plastics that are not compostable. So it's really hard to make sense of all of this. It's just straight confusing. Bio-based materials like bio-based plastics do not necessarily break down in the compost. In some cases, they're designed to be recycled with traditional plastic, but there's very little to indicate to the consumer what's the right thing to do. The labeling just isn't consistent. So the overall complexity and confusion around this just increases. But I also want to note that even truly compostable packaging will only break down under the right conditions. This is a quick picture I wanted to show you of items pulled by StopWaste staff from nearly finished compost at a facility that handles some of Alameda County's material. The picture on the left are utensils, and they're not even close to breaking down. They're a little bit misshapen, but as you can see, after a full cycle, they still have a lot of structure left to them. And then on the right, we have a thinner material. This is a clearly labeled compostable cup, but it's still intact in the compost. So at an industrial facility that's working on a tight time frame and turning their compost around, these kind of items that are left at the end of the process are a contaminant at that point. So they're likely to get screened out and sent to landfill. Some fiber-based foodware, like the bottom right, and also the coffee cup, has a polymer coating to create a moisture barrier. This thin layer of film plastic is a contaminant in the compost and leads to microplastics in the soil and the water. Other fiber-based items contain a coating used as a grease barrier that contains harmful perfluorinated compounds known as PFAS. These compounds are very effective at repelling grease or water, but they're known to be harmful to the environment and toxic to human health. From a business perspective, cost is also a concern, and these items just tend to be more expensive than traditional plastics. So the bottom line, The only viable compostables are fiber with compostable plastic liner that is BPI certified. It's a mouthful, I know. There are products like this that exist. Pete's Coffee, for example, uses such a cup in their Berkeley stores. I'm not sure, maybe elsewhere as well. But sorting, figuring out which bin it goes into and what material it's made out of, and cost issues remain. So if you are purchasing compostables for your operation, StopWaste has a guide that can help you make the best decision for your business and evaluate these products. We can post a link to it in the chat, and we'll do so, have a link at the end as well. So after having said all that, ultimately we can say single use is not the solution. There's a better way, and it's reuse. Reuse is nothing new. And the good news is that reuse wins for the environment and the business's bottom line every time, as I was mentioning earlier. Essentially, reusables will always hit a break-even point, whether it's 2 uses for real cutlery to beat out plastic disposables, or 14 uses for a reusable clamshell to beat out a paper box. Once you've hit that point, that break-even point, each additional use accrues more and more environmental benefits. And many reusables can be washed and reused hundreds or even thousands of times. There's a lot of different studies that demonstrate this. I'm not going to dive into the research right now, but the particular numbers that I'm citing above with 14 uses for reusable clamshell, et cetera, they come from Upstream, which is a nonprofit whose work is focused on reducing plastic pollution, and they've done a great deal of study and advocacy on reuse. So what's really exciting about all this to me is that there's a whole new reuse economy emerging for food service that has the potential to completely disrupt our current disposable food service paradigm and replace it with something better that can compete on price, win for the environment, and improve the customer experience. Reusable foodware is not new by any means, but it certainly did fall out of favor during the pandemic. The CDC has confirmed no cases of coronavirus from surface contact, and it does not suggest that disposable items are safer than reusables. Similarly, the Alameda County Department of Environmental Health, they're consistent with the CDC. They allow the use of reusable foodware when properly washed, rinsed, and sanitized. StopWaste goes one step further. We would encourage the use of reusables wherever possible to reduce your costs, reduce waste, reduce litter, and improve the experience overall. So reusables can be provided for on-site dining safely, and customer-provided reusables, such as people bringing in their own coffee cups, can be utilized by using a contactless pour, as you can see in the picture on the right. We have an information sheet that expands on this, specifically on the safety of reusables, and we'll add this link to the chat as well and share it later. There's also, I just want to quickly pitch that there will also be a webinar coming soon from our friends at the Rethink Disposable program that dives more deeply into their Reopen with Reuse campaign. This campaign is centered around how reusables are safe and less harmful than any single-use options. I don't have a date for that webinar yet, but we'll be following up with participants to let them know about it as soon as it's scheduled. So quickly, because I want to get to our panelists, these are just 3 very quick local examples that I want to share. A restaurant in Alameda called Honolulu Barbecue, and 2 restaurants in San Anselmo, Creekside Pizza and Comforts. And the main thing I'll call to your attention is the bottom bullet under each picture. That number is showing how much money these businesses are saving each year after implementing the change to reusables. And this is all from not purchasing disposables anymore, that recurring cost. The number above the cost savings is the number of individual items that have been eliminated. So in the case of Creekside Pizza, 35,770 individual disposable items are no longer being used per year. So the cup, the lid, the straw, all eliminated. So all of these businesses are saving this money annually. The range can be great. It can be from $1,000 to, as you can see on the right, over $14,000 a year saved. And the one thing they all have in common is that 100% of the businesses, not just these 3, but all the others that Rethink Disposable has worked with, they are all saving money. So as I mentioned, these examples come from Clean Water Action. They operate the Rethink Disposable program. They offer free technical assistance, specializing in converting to reusables for on-site dining. They handle the product research, the purchasing, the delivery, the works basically, and they help businesses save money just like the three we looked at. They're working in Alameda County right now, and StopWaste has provided incentive funding to help manage the costs of reusables for businesses trying it out. Today, though, we're here to focus on takeout and delivery and meet some of the new businesses that have emerged to offer services and solutions for all this takeout packaging waste. Let's dive in, and I'll introduce our three panelists. First, we have Linda Pulio, the founder and CEO of Dishcraft Robotics. Similar to a linen service, Dishcraft delivers quality reusable dishes, to-go containers, and flatware each day, and they clean the dirties in their hub. They use robotics and AI to wash and sanitize foodware and provide ultra clean wares for their diners. We also have Paul Liatsakis, the founder and CEO of Sparkle Reusables. Sparkle offers custom designed reusable foodware systems for institutional food service, events, grocery stores, and restaurants. Sparkle's services range from supplying containers and return systems to washing and delivery. And we also have Lindsay Hull, from the CEO of Dispatch Goods. Dispatch is a service handling all aspects of prepared food delivery, including collection, cleaning, and return of foodware to participating food businesses. Thank you all for being here today. I'm going to kick us off by asking you all to give us a brief introduction and share with us what your company does and your current status in terms of serving Alameda County. After that, Alma from our team, with help from Stephanie, will pose some additional questions to each of you from the audience. We'll hold early questions until each of you have had a chance to give us an overview of the service. Linda, would you like to start us off, and then we'll hear from Paul and Lindsay?
Great. Sorry, I was trying to get into present mode. Having a little bit of trouble. I'll just go forward. So we're Dishcraft. We started in 2015 and primarily to solve dishwashing problems that we found the restaurant industry called out to us. And we're really struggling to find a solution that was much more sustainable as well as safer and solve some of their labor issues. So dishwashing, there's a tremendous amount of wasted water, energy, chemicals, and the alternative, which you've heard from Justin in terms of single-use disposables, is just a mounting problem of waste in the landfill. That we read a report of 561 billion items thrown out in 2019. Since the pandemic, we believe that this is now in the trillions, and there's got to be a better solution. So Dishcraft started to build a better infrastructure to handle that kind of scalable volume. The way that we solve dishes is very much like linen service. So we every day go and drop off clean, perfectly immaculately clean dishes at a customer site. And then we pick those up and bring those back to a centralized dishwashing hub that is powered by robotics. So here you're seeing we handle a wide variety of ceramics as well as containers. And so we are good for takeout as well as dine-in wares. We have a very nice, neat, tidy collection system that we will install at the site of the customer. It reduces footprint. What the diner is doing is dropping their wares into a cart. We bring those cart, as I mentioned, back to our location where they get inserted into the robot. Every single ware will get inspected 22 different times. We can see things that the human eye can't pick up. And then we sanitize it. We're exceeding health code standards, and rinse and repeat, do that every single day. So we have 100% net promoter score, meaning that clients will and do refer us, how willing they are to refer us to other clients. We have hit a number of points for them on sustainability. Diners will say to us, thank you for coming here because we feel so much better not throwing out items. Food service providers are really happy because we're improving some of their labor workflow, as well as providing a really nice, neat, tidy way for them to handle the wares. And customers have also shared that we were the #1 impact they had on their sustainability initiatives this year. So why we're better for the environment? We reuse and recirculate the water. And so we use 1/4 of the water and 1/10 of the energy. So if you imagine someone in a dish room, even in your home, you're spraying each individual ware and you're not able to recirculate that. And so Dishcraft is just a very, very powerful solution in terms of that. We see things that the human eye can't pick up and therefore can clean it. So what you see on the left is what you perceive as a clean plate, and on the right is what the robot sees. So as I mentioned previously, we inspect every single ware 22 different times. We also do allergen and ATP testing. And so our goal, and we are doing it, is to provide the cleanest, safest ware possible. At every single customer location, on average, this is what they are saving in terms of the environment. So greatly reducing waste, 1 ton of waste per location, as well as 29 metric tons of CO2. What we have available to offer today, and we are serving 4 different verticals, so healthcare, restaurants, hospitality, and corporate cafeterias. We also have just started to pilot, with hotels, hospitality, restaurants, healthcare. We would like to pilot also with schools, but we're not yet in schools. So we do a variety of ceramics as well as reusable containers. There are 7 different sizes of those containers. We also do flatware, mugs, and cups. All right, ready to answer any questions you may have. And by the way, we are ready to go. We are serving the entire Bay Area and can handle anything in Alameda County.
Thank you, Linda. I think we'll go through, if that's all right, all of the initial presentations, and then we'll launch into questions from there.
Great.
So Paul, would you love to go next? Oh, you're muted.
Hi, everyone. Paul Leotsakis here with Sparkle Reusables. I'm on the road. I'm in LA this week, so I'm not in my usual office. So excuse that. I'm noticing like the screen looks darker where I'm at, and hopefully the bandwidth is okay. So we've been around doing this since 2015, really, when we hit the road in the Bay Area. So we offer throughout this years of being on hitting the pavement in the Bay Area, we have offers ranging from event services, like if you're doing an event with either your customers, where you're delivering 50+ meals, or a street fair, we are there to work with the food trucks or the individual vendor to supply reusable containers for that. We have a corporate program where we work with customers at a local, like financial district, for example, or a hub in a downtown area, where we supply our vendors with reusable containers and then enroll all the usual customers from that area on a program to access our containers and return them either at their lobby or at their back at the vendor's location. We also have technology that works with one-on-one if somebody wants to take a container and eat at their house and then deliver back to the restaurant whenever they're ready to do that. And throughout the pandemic, we have shifted our operations to focus on bulk meal deliveries of prepared meals to homes, particularly with senior meals. So this last year, you'll find us typically behind the scenes working with vendors that are supplying meals to seniors, or at a residential institution that has facilities that prepares the meals and then delivers to the rooms. We have different kind of containers. I'm going to show our 2 main workhorses. We have the half size and our soup container. They come in different sizes. we are happy to sit down with the vendor and see how best we can match the container needs that the vendor has. Over the last 6 months or so, we have technology that allows you to take a membership, a subscription, and offer the service that way as a vendor. Or if there's a support behind our program, for example, from a city-funded agency, we're happy to give our membership, if you will, or access to our containers at free of charge, as long as you return your container at a receptacle, a sparkle receptacle around town, or back at the vendors, you'll get your deposit back. So we can be very creative with how we deploy a program for a vendor or at a city. We just have to have an initial conversation with the vendor to figure out what's the best way to structure the program for them. We have, if it's a corporate customer, we work with facility managers to position return receptacles either at a lobby or at a kitchenette upstairs, and do outreach to their employees to educate them about how the program works and how to access the containers. And also we would do the same kind of training for vendors and their staff to make sure that they know how to use the containers and how to handle a customer requesting a reusable container. So I'm happy to share a quick screen. I wasn't planning, I thought I was going to do this in my car, actually, to be honest with you. So I wasn't going to share my screen. However, I think it's useful to maybe share with you guys a quick photo of what our our drop boxes look like. So you can see, excuse me here. There we go. So you can see what our type of return receptacles. This is at UCSF. We custom made a box there for the customer that looked more like a little bit of an organic wood outdoor feel to it. Sorry about that. Sorry here. Yeah, these are our receptacles at Whole Foods. But yeah, this wouldn't, sorry, all of a sudden my mouse is going crazy. So this is a return receptacle at a facility in South San Francisco at Merck that matches a lot of the decor in their kitchen area. And lastly, this is a dispenser we have at Whole Foods in San Rafael, where their customers can actually access the containers from a dispenser, and they can also return them on site. We work with a lot of community organizations. For example, in this case in San Rafael, this last slide you're seeing here is some folks from a local employment program that works with youth with disabilities that we harness for helping with the pickup and delivery of our containers to the wash site. And of course, we offer wash services as well as pickup and delivery. So I'm going to leave it at that. And please, at the end of this presentation after Lindsay, I'm happy to answer as many questions as you guys want to ask.
Thank you, Paul.
Hey, so I'm Lindsay. I'm one of the founders of Dispatch Goods, and I can kind of show our website, but basically what Dispatch Goods aims to do is solve the reverse logistics of reuse, meaning when a business is providing reusable containers, most of the time it ends up at a secondary location. And sometimes that's at the home and sometimes that's at the office. And that's where things get really complicated. And so our focus has been to create the reverse logistics infrastructure for collection, sorting, processing, various container types. Some we own, some we don't. And then we go to a processing facility where all the dishware is washed, and then restaurants and our partners can order reusable packaging from us, just like single use. So to show you a little bit of what our packaging looks like. Here's our site. Most of our reusable packaging is steel and glass. And that's because steel has the highest, we're one of the highest reclamation rates. So we're confident that after the steel leaves our system, that it's not going to be landfilled because it has inherent value. And the lids are silicone. And then we also have a variety of glass mason jars as well. And so basically restaurants partner with us. And right now we're approaching 40 partners. So we're in the East Bay, North Bay, and San Francisco. And here's a list of some of our restaurant partners that are in San Francisco that provide our reusable packaging. Some do it as an optional add-on, and some do it as the default packaging. So we have a growing number of restaurants that have converted all to reusable packaging. And then their customers get the reusable packaging and we handle the reverse logistics. So we do home collection. Our goal is to build a recycling-like infrastructure where we can collect many items per house, get a lot of density based on the number of partners we have, and then be able to solve kind of the wicked problem that is single-use packaging waste. And so it's been a really exciting year or so, even though the pandemic obviously has been a little bit volatile for us. We started off solving this problem first with our with enterprise customers. We had partnerships like Yelp and Zendesk, and basically we put return bins at the offices, and then we had a lot of restaurants in the downtown area. And then we would do collection at the enterprise offices. Now we're working with caterers as well as restaurants that do catering to companies so that we drop off in one location, we're picking up in a secondary location. In most scenarios, we own the inventory, but we are container agnostic, meaning we can process all different kinds of containers. So we offer basically the reverse logistics for reusable packaging, regardless of whether it's owned by us or not. And we are a Bay Area based female owned company. Just this month, we passed 100,000 items saved from the waste stream. So that's been an exciting milestone for us and growing really quickly. So we're really excited. We now have 6 restaurants in Alameda. We're working towards a grocery pilot that should launch this month. So we're excited to see density grow in Alameda, as well as the East Bay. There's a lot of excitement in the East Bay for reuse in general. And I think that what Dispatch Goods feels strongly is that there is an elevated dining experience that is missed with single-use packaging because it's essentially garbage. And so we can now help restaurants put their food in containers that more closely resembles what the dine-in experience would be. And for a lot of restaurants and chefs, that's really important. And so that's why we've really carefully selected what kind of packaging we're offering, as well as the branding around reuse, because we can basically put more development dollars into the packaging itself because it's not just being used once, it's being used many times. So that's kind of the overview. Our core customers are restaurants and caterers and in some kind of enterprise campuses. And yeah, I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, I think we have a few other questions for the group. I'm gonna pass it to Alma now to bring us through some more questions.
Thanks, Justin. It's great to join you all today. Thanks for being here. So we're going to do a little bit of a round robin. We're going to pose a few questions to learn a bit, to give the speakers a little bit more time to talk a little bit more about their businesses, and we'll go around and then we'll open it up to some of the questions that came up in chat and any additional questions that you have as we go through the questions. So we'll start, maybe we'll go in the same order with Linda and then Paul and Lindsay. And the first question you all actually started to touch on in your introductions, but it's around just kind of what it's like for your day-to-day, like what your typical arrangement looks like with a food business. And then if you could just walk us through a little bit of how that looks logistically from the perspective of a restaurant or a food business operator.
Sure. So as I said, we deliver almost like a linen service. So every single day we will drop off clean wares and pick up the dirties to bring back to a centralized hub. We provide the customer with a collection system. And from their point, we work out the workflow and do some training to ensure that there's very low loss rates. And so we can deliver to a customer within as short as 2 weeks and have them set up. And we've had no customer churn, which has been delightful, which proves that the thing is needed.
Great. So for, let's say a customer that's in the corporate program of Sparkle, we would, depending on the volume, it all depends here on the volume of the vendor or the facility is doing. You could see us 2 to 3 times a week picking up the dirties from the receptacle if we have a return site, daily if needed. And the customer typically doesn't have to see us when we do that. We come in, we have a liner that's inside the return bin that's non-porous, that gets taken out with all the containers in it, and a new one is replaced with in that return bin. For the customer on the restaurant side, they would see us also, again, depending on how often they need replenishment of the containers, but our containers come in a sealed bag. They similar to, let's say, the disposables, we're another service that's providing containers to that vendor. And we hand the containers. The vendor, we are able to see how many that vendor is needing based on our back end of our technology that we track inventory use and deliver accordingly. Yeah, I would say those are the 2 main entry points for the ongoing operations. Like I mentioned during the presentation, for the beginning of a launch or a partnership, we would we would do an intake where it involves sitting down with the vendor, matching the type of container needs, determining particular hours they would like us to come in to make sure we're avoiding any busy times, and also when is the best time to train staff. And of course, everybody is able to reach us as we give information about how often, if anybody at any time needs to get a hold of us, we have that information at their fingertips.
Thanks, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Lindsay?
Yeah, I think from our partners' perspective, it functions very much like single use. They can order ad hoc through our order form, or they can go on auto replenishment. So our busier partners have auto replenishment. And so then from a customer's, like the end customer's perspective, that's where we try to mimic curbside recycling as much as possible. So some companies that have large buildings, they have collection every day, and then in neighborhoods in San Francisco, it's weekly. So our restaurant partners, our enterprise partners, our catering partners, very much like single use. And then our home customers we're mimicking recycling.
Thanks so much to you all. So this next question is something that has surely been on everyone's minds for the last year plus. And that is just, how have you been responding to questions or concerns about safety during the pandemic? And just moving forward, what types of questions as we're reopening do you anticipate?
You want to go through the same order of answers on that?
Sounds great.
Sure.
Thank you.
So Dishcraft used the opportunity during the pandemic to develop new technology so that we can offer end-to-end touchless, contactless handling of wares. That means that no one has touched the plate until the chef actually plates it or the diner gets it. So what that does for us, it's the safest system you can have. We also added in allergen testing, ATP testing. And our technology itself, as I mentioned, has 22 points of inspection. So there simply is no cleaner or safer ware.
Right. Yeah. The first thing we did was contact local health departments and make sure we are in sync with any additional requirements they had. We also asked for their blessing to send out any information to our customers, but quoting and referencing the health department guidelines. So we did a lot of communication and also beefing up of our internal systems of additional spraying, and anytime we went into a facility, I mean, stuff we already do in terms of sanitizing hands, but we just kind of beefed up everything along those points. and remember, there was a lot of information that was either not accurate or we just didn't know in the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah, I think a lot of the information later that we received made everybody feel a lot at ease that most of the COVID is spread through the air. It's not like through contact surfaces that is the main issue. So I think we all breathed a sigh of relief, and also it helps to have county health departments backing us up, and a lot of information sharing that we did to all our memberships via email blasts, via letters to our seniors, for example, to make sure everybody was on the same page.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of uncertainty at the beginning of the pandemic about whether reuse was safe. And so we spent a long time connecting also with the health department, and my original co-founder is getting her PhD in waste management, and really compiled a bunch of research. So we do the health department recommended process twice. We also do lab testing of all of the goods that are going through. It's an automated system as well, so that it's not touched by any hands after it goes through the initial conveyor belt. So I think that there's been a lot of automation that's exciting in the dishwashing space. But also there was, I would say, a heightened anxiety around reuse at the beginning of the pandemic that we're also not seeing. Like I mentioned, our restaurants now are sending this out as a default. So there's, I would say that there's been no pushback on behalf of the customers of those restaurants, as well as with our enterprise partners now, that reuse isn't safe. So that's not something that we're hearing. That's a large concern, especially because I feel like a lot of the companies that have been working in the space have done a lot to combat that misinformation campaign that happened at the beginning of the pandemic. And that's been I would say well supported by the nonprofits who have done a lot of research to show that reuse is safe and that the dishwashing process is safe and effective.
That's great to hear. Thank you all so much. We've got some questions coming in through the chat, so we're going to jump there quickly, and Steph is going to help pull some of those questions out.
Yep. Thanks, everybody, for typing in your questions. We have a couple about returning the reusables, and Echo is wondering, and this was, I think, for Sparkle, because you guys work with events. So what's your success rate having customers bring back the containers at events specifically? And then Becky also is wondering about return of containers and I think this is for maybe also Sparkle, who does senior meals when they're taken home. Then what happens if they're not returned? Is there a deposit not returned? Or if you want to address just the return of reusables? Maybe Sparkle, go please.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say we feel blessed to have, and I'm proud to say, a 90+ return rate on reusables. And that is not to be taken lightly in terms of, we did some good work and foundationally to ensure that we're reaping the benefits of that. So I think the key here is to communicate how the program works to, if it's in an event space or with the seniors ahead of time, so they know what they're getting into and how the program works. And we fortunately have done that well. For senior meal deliveries, there's instances, for example, where the containers are not placed outside the door when the next delivery comes. If that happens, we have a note that says, remember to return your reusables. Again, within the next day or two, those are out. Very often it's because a senior had to go to the hospital or something happened, but it has not been an issue. But we do also have some measures in place to remind that they need to be returned. For events, it's really an interesting, I think it's still an experimental space, but we have successfully done street fairs, for example, where we take a deposit. And when I first said we were going to take a $5 deposit from all the vendors at from all the customers at food trucks at a street fair, we were even nervous to put that out there, because we thought, we're going to get lynched because we're going in between the customer and their food, But I'm happy to report that that was not an issue. People actually appreciated the fact that we were there, and a $5 deposit didn't seem to be a problem. We just for some of these fairs, again, we were hoping to refine the system throughout the last year, which we never got a chance to. The street fairs were the first thing to close. We did a manual deposit in some of these street fairs where we would take a $5 deposit either via credit card or cash.
Did any of the other speakers want to address the reusable return question?
Yeah, so we have a 95, right now we have a 95% return rate, and it's increasing. In fact, at one of our customers, it's only a 1% loss, so 99% return. And what we found is great messaging helps. We do training on site, and our wares themselves are high quality, so they don't look like something you should throw out. And so that also reduces the loss rates.
And Linda, maybe a little add on, somebody was asking, do you do takeout as well, or is your service, yeah? So
yeah, no, we do dine in and take away both.
And so with the return for the takeout, same kind of approach.
Yeah, it's the same. It's all about great messaging.
Lindsay, want to add anything?
I agree that when something doesn't feel disposable, people don't dispose of it. And I think that's been, a big part of our strategy around messaging. Messaging matters, and buy-in from the partners matter, so that they can help educate customers. And really, you got to make it as easy as recycling, because if people feel as though it's a lot of extra effort to return something, they're not going to do it. So for us, kind of the vision that we have for the world is that there needs to be a fourth bin for reusables. And so we put the fourth bin right next to the trash, compost, recycling, and then obviously still offer home collection. So we feel like there's very little reason not to send our packaging back to us unless you're purposefully stealing it. And luckily, it's a small minority that does that.
Great. So Kiyomi from Just Fair has a whole bunch of great questions, and I just want to pick out one about kind of aesthetics or customizing the reusables you guys provide. How customizable are the reusable wares to fit a client's office aesthetics? And then maybe also on that note, how do you kind of set up the infrastructure at a given customer depending on their needs? Might vary. Do any of you guys, I think Sparkle, you guys do customize or,
yeah,
right?
So, we early on understood the importance of making sure that our bins match the aesthetics of an office, for example, and make it presentable for having it in a lobby. So we use our default is our boxes are wood, sustainably harvested walnut in particular, because we found that to match a lot of the Bay Area aesthetics. But we are open to designing something for customer needs. So I think the main issue around customizability has been around the return bins and how they look. Again, labeling on the containers, if that's something that a vendor or a company wants to see, we can discuss that too. There's a certain quality type of label that needs to go on these containers to withstand high temp dishwashing. So we're happy to talk with customers around particular sponsorship or visual on a container, if in particular if they want to have like a line of containers for their own internal system. Yeah, I'm happy to answer other customization questions if I didn't cover everything on that answer.
Do any of the other panelists want to address customization?
We're very similar to Sparkle in that we customize the collection drops to match the customer's decor. We have a wide variety of containers that we found meet 90% of the needs. And if the volume is great enough, then we are open also to customizing specific containers for a client.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's the same for us. We customize the return bins, and we can use our containers. We can also have a customer purchase the containers of their own, or if it's a large enough customer, we can work with our manufacturer to do a custom design. And we've done that for big campuses.
Great. And maybe we just want to take a quick pulse on how well folks are following. Is this kind of addressing concerns? Are you with us still? If you want to raise your Zoom hand, just give us a quick raised hand. If this is kind of addressing the questions you have, this is what you want to know. I'm checking hands, not too much raised here. Oh yeah, here people are starting to raise their hands. If this is really not what you were hoping to hear, do put your question or your request in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to it. I want to we have a couple more questions here from the chat. So here's one that's maybe about the collection. You might think, well, if you go out of your way to collect the reusables, how does that work with emissions? Is there sort of a trade-off? Do you guys do sort of a balance sheet on where you save on emissions and where there are any?
I mean, we know by location on average we're saving 29 metric tons. We do this by having a route that is limited to 25 miles and is circular, so that way we can, reduce our impact on the environment.
Yeah, and for Sparkle, we have been providing reports on a monthly basis to all our customers. I know this is particularly more important to corporate customers and their sustainability departments, for example, where we break down the total single-use items avoided or prevented during the month, the equivalent footprint, carbon footprint, poundage waste diverted, water savings as well. So we provide all those metrics, and all our operations are either done in a zero waste or zero emissions manner via EV, electric car, or bicycle or public transit. So we're trying to be really mindful of that piece of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback that, I feel like Justin touched on it at the beginning, that reuse almost always comes out ahead. It's a matter of when the break-even point is. And so internally, when we've done our analyses, the material sourcing of the container has a larger impact than the actual travel, particularly because we've gotten to a point that we're doing quite a few, like our houses and drop-off locations are quite close together. So if you compare doing a circular route that's more similar to recycling versus everyone going to a place to drop off containers, it's much better to do optimized routing than the alternative. The way that we can improve this further is really to just have more reusables in the world, so that if you look at the collection process of recycling and reusables, that they're kind of more similar. So when we look at how to optimize this over time, it's really collecting more things per stop. And so we're excited to improve that. But really the biggest opportunity is the weight of the container, using recycled materials. Those things have a higher effect on the break-even point than the actual collection routing. But we kind of look at the three levers for carbon, which are collection, dishwashing, and manufacturing, and compare that to the different products in the single-use world. And so we're constantly looking to improve each kind of bucket of those contributors. But yeah, reuse comes out ahead in almost every instance.
Thanks. Clearly, all of you have thought that through quite a bit. Here's another important question. Can you each speak a bit about how the cost of reusable services like yours compares with, say, disposable single use?
We are often less than, and so it's been frictionless for clients to take us on, because we just find out what they're using today and provide our pricing. So we've often had a savings for the customer, but we're not more than they are currently spending.
Yeah, we're the same. We feel like we have to either match or beat the price of disposables. And there's some disposables actually that there's some customers that we couldn't work with because their price of disposables was just so dirt cheap because of some sweetheart deals they had with the supplier. But for the most part, that's what we strive for, and we try to meet or beat the price they're paying with disposables.
Yeah, for us, it really depends on the customer. I would say that single-use plastics are the hardest thing to cost compete against because we're doing the forward and the reverse logistics, but compostables have increased quite a bit in the last year. So we're much more cost competitive and can usually beat compostable packaging. Yeah, large companies, it's very easy to beat single use. For small restaurants, it's a little bit more difficult, but we've been working on kind of shifting our pricing model. And also there's always the opportunity to pass the cost along to the customer if it's a smaller restaurant and we can't compete. But yeah, over time, I think with density and scale, we'll get there.
Awesome. One more quick question about where your containers are made, or where you procure them. Anything you want to say? I know some of you already addressed materials.
I'm happy to say that our this has been our most popular container, and they're made in Taiwan. The company is a US-based manufacturing operation or based company, but they're manufactured in Taiwan. And we also work with, I should say also, we work with other containers, US-based. For example, we have Preserves line of dishes and bowls as well, and they are made here in the US.
Cool.
We have a combo of what's done in the US as well as overseas in China.
Same.
Just quickly, so Vicky and Peter, you guys have your hands up. If you want to, if either this is a holdover from a little poll earlier, or if you want to speak, you're unmuted. Maybe Vicky, go first. If you didn't mean to speak, just lower your hand. And I think you're muted if you are trying to speak. Same for Peter. If either of you would like to speak live, unmute yourself and just go ahead.
Hi, Peter. Okay, maybe we could come back to them.
Okay, yeah, any other questions? Please put them in the chat or raise your hand and just ask them directly. Or if you want to talk about your situation, your food business, what your current practices are around single use or takeout foodware, and have a discussion with us and our panelists, this would be a great time. We have a few more questions because there's lots to ask our panelists, and we'll go to those until, or just for the time. Alma, you want to?
Sure. Another question that we had for the panelists is, we spoke a little bit about some of the challenges, one being product loss, and you all touched on how you kind of manage and deal with this, but just curious about any other obstacles or challenges that you've encountered along your way, and just how you overcame them, and the solutions that you came up with to these obstacles.
Seems like there's always something. Yeah, I'm the first thing that came to mind was how I didn't expect initially that outdoor return bins were going to take such a beating in an outdoor environment, from customers to the elements, and if it wasn't the sun, it was the rain. Yeah, it was just, it still amazes me, you know, the amount of beating that an outdoor bin can take. And we have to constantly, and we're still redesigning and perfecting those outdoor bins that we have.
Thanks for sharing that. Linda or Lindsay, do you have any obstacles or challenges and solutions to share?
We spend a lot of time on collection in order to create, to give back footprint to locations. That's been something we always work on. And so I think we're, trying to go vertical to save as much space as possible. And we've redesigned wares so that they're can stack really nicely while also allowing them to dry really nicely, which operationally helps. But we're always improving.
I think our biggest challenge has been just the ever-changing restaurant landscape and navigating that since that's been our core customer base. And so experiencing surges when shelter in place happened and then reopened and then shut down again. And then takeout shifted, it's been on a downward trend, but we're also seeing a shift of where people are getting food right now, what type of food they're getting versus where we were 6 months ago. So it's been, I hope, the most volatile year in the restaurant industry. And so hopefully we're starting to find some homeostasis so that it's a little bit more predictable going forward, because navigating that has been, just makes your head spin.
Yeah, I certainly hope that mid-month, reopening will be a boon for you guys and a little more predictability. Lindsay, I know you guys have several projects where you work with a number of restaurants. I've always been curious about how you kind of build the buzz or like work with a group of businesses, or like how much is it around getting kind of critical mass or like a cluster of businesses going? Because that would obviously matter if we want to try to design some pilot projects.
Yeah, we do need density. Like having one restaurant in the middle of nowhere is never going to work out economically. So my co-founder Maya is she was the West Coast partnerships lead at Caviar and DoorDash. So I feel like she came with a lot of restaurant relationships that have been really useful for us. And then we also really lean on referrals. A lot of the restaurants that we're partnered with came from their chef friends who told them about us. And so that's a really powerful tool. And I feel like super excited that restaurants feel proud enough to partner with us, that they are telling their friends about it and convincing. I think restaurants have shifted what seemed impossible to do reusable packaging for all of your takeout. I feel like a couple of years ago, that seemed like an impossibility. And so, we know that density plays a key role. And so we have tried to stay really focused. I mean, pre-COVID, we had 12 restaurants on 2 blocks. So we were able to achieve even more density then. So I feel like the restaurant industry has been really drowning in all of the changes. So now that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I think that there's some brain space to explore like really exciting new operational transitions. And so I think that it's only going to get better from a density standpoint over time, because we saw it pre-pandemic how quickly we could get all the restaurants on a block to participate, and expect that to come back.
And Paul, have you had with your project sort of ripple effects where, say, you started on one campus and then word got out, or where you basically one project helped launch another?
Yeah, boy, so much of our work initially was around, even though we had our service and we were a service provider, we ended up doing a lot of education and outreach to consumers, to vendors, just to wrap their minds around this concept. Remember, we're almost taking it for granted now that people are aware of zero waste and the problem with disposables. But in 2015, 2016, this was still a revolutionary concept, and I would still say it is still. But in terms of having ripple effects, the initial ripple effect that I was taken aback by, and it was really exciting, was how the cities, one city decided to try a pilot, and then another city wanted to do it as well, and another city. So we found ourselves going, spreading all throughout the Bay Area, because cities saw the value of trying to switch to something other than your typical 3-bin system. Yeah, that was the most impressive. And in terms of clusters, you know, we've had vendors talk to each other and referrals, and that's always welcome. Like Lindsay said, you know, there's no better way than word of mouth, and better yet, to customers, word of mouth. And we have a lot of our members that we've gotten from another member that was excited about us to tell their friends and family.
I'll throw in a quick question from Becky, who's asking, how clean do the returns have to be? Like, can you just, do you want to rinse them, or doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter for us, because in our case, we have automation to scrub everything. So we have things come back filthy and it's fine.
And I think a follow-up question to Linda, is the focus small restaurants or corporations with lunchrooms that don't have a commercial dishwasher?
Both. We work with all shapes and sizes. So we have customers that do not have room for a commercial dish room, and so we are a good solution for that. We also have customers that have commercial dish rooms but are not able to do the volume or hire the labor that they want, because there's a labor shortage and there's also increasing wages as well. So we are working with restaurants that are small, as well as large corporations that have multi campuses around the country. And so we're open.
Yeah,
Right.
we ask our participants to rinse the containers, and we always appreciate when that happens. Of course, our setup of returns is built to withstand any kind of food items being thrown in. It's a non-porous liner. Smells and leaking doesn't happen. However, it's always appreciated to have the reusable returned with as minimum of food as possible. And yeah, I think there was a follow-up question possibly. Is there a second piece of that part to that?
I think you captured it. We had another question about the role of local government. I know we have some city partners on the call as well. And perhaps Justin, you could jump in on this as well, but just about what can local governments do to help, and are there policies and ordinances that should be adopted?
And maybe from business perspective, what would help you adopt, say, or hire one of these services? What kind of legislative framework would help that, or ordinance would support you in that, or not? If you want to chime in, and you can raise your hand, we'll just call on you if you just want to speak, or feel free to chat.
I can speak to that briefly, just from StopWaste perspective as a local government agency. We've been keeping a finger on the pulse of this, and there are a lot of policies coming out from cities, from counties. I think this started a few years ago when there was a lot of media attention on the issue of plastic pollution in the oceans, in particular, marine debris, straws. It has evolved, and like the city of Berkeley, city of Alameda, and Alameda County, others have passed ordinances of various shapes and sizes. At StopWaste, we've looked closely at this, and actually it's what led us here today, to be honest, because we felt that before moving forward with a policy, or with the stick approach, if you will, we wanted to make sure that all of this was doable. Like that is, solutions like the ones we're hearing about today are readily available, they're ready to go. They're roughly cost competitive with alternatives for disposables. We want to make sure that both for the businesses and for the consumer side, that reuse is a viable option. And then we feel like that would be the point that we could take it the next step after that. But right now, for Alameda County, we're promoting this voluntary approach with incentives and technical assistance to try to build up the industry. But I'd also be interested in hearing from our panelists about this, and your perspectives on how policy can support your work.
I've always said that, I come from an energy industry background, and having rebates to promote the purchase of LED light bulbs or programmable thermostats, I think had a big effect on getting those technologies and that different, better solution out in the world. And it'd be great to see a similar type of deployment here, where there's a carrot and a stick approach, and the carrot being maybe that delta between the disposables and the reusables being what's covered via incentives to vendors, for example, or to a use provider to pass on to vendors to help them more widely adopt reusables.
I feel like the disconnect we see is that, from a pricing standpoint, it's viable in large companies to beat the cost of single use. So when you're picking up lots and lots of containers per stop, that works out. Where it's more difficult is in the home customer. And what I feel like is, there's an opportunity for government to help shift this, is really putting the cost of single use on the manufacturer. So the companies that are pushing out all of this waste into the world are not the ones that are responsible for paying for its collection, processing, and what happens to it. And so, from our perspective, I would say that we think that the biggest fix that needs to happen is creating extended producer responsibility laws where, whatever you put into the world is your responsibility and not the taxpayers or the company or the household where it's being dropped off. Because then it becomes more apples to apples versus apples to oranges. We're providing the forward and the reverse logistics, and single-use manufacturers are only providing the forward logistics. And because reuse is cheaper, in large volumes that can be offset, but in a household setting, it's much more difficult. So I think that there's a really big opportunity to somehow tie that additional cost for the reverse logistics to the container, the packaging that's being landfilled, compost, recycling, best case scenario.
And maybe from that big picture question back to something pretty tangible here. Thanks, Adrienne, for asking. How do you compare your services to those of companies that rent dishware for events? Would you offer your services for single events? You tend to have relationships with your customers long term, but what about single events?
I mean, we're not set up for that. We think that the party rental is doing a fantastic job at that already. And so that's that would be our suggestion. We're much more set up for a monthly subscription.
We, on the other hand, have done single events, and at this point, we're still happy to do those type of events. We particularly like if we have a vendor, for example, that does that we already work with, that has a large order that came in for meals, and they would reach out to us outside of the regular one-off customers coming in to have those meals delivered in our reusables, and we will pick them up.
Great.
Yeah, for us, I would say that we love supporting catering orders for our current partners. For festivals, we're not really set up for that. For recurrent events like a farmer's market, if there's a lot of restaurant vendors, that's something that we are better positioned to orchestrate. But really large one-off events it's difficult from a personnel and an inventory standpoint to support that type of event.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, everybody, for great questions. We want to save a few minutes for some closing, but if you have more questions and definitely want to continue the conversation, Justin's going to share where to email or what to do next. Justin, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen again. Can you all see it?
Yeah.
Good. It's always a good sign. So I want to thank our panelists. First of all, we were really able to get a sense, I think, of what you do and how you do it. And get through all of our audience questions, which has been great. I appreciate all your forthcoming responses and willingness to share. I want to leave the group today with some helpful links, and we'll also be sending these out in an email follow-up to everyone who registered for the event today. The recording of the webinar will be available on the page listed first, the stopwaste.org/reusables to go. Also, we have links to the 3 vendors you met today: Dispatch Goods, Sparkle Reusables, and Dishcraft. The fact sheet about the safety of reusable foodware is also available on this page. For compostable foodware, the guide we mentioned earlier is at the second link listed. And then if you have more questions that come up after the event, please don't hesitate to contact me, Justin Lehrer, at this email address listed here, jlehrer@stopwaste.org. And to reiterate, StopWaste is very interested in helping to develop this marketplace. We want to develop pilot projects. We want to test new approaches for reusable foodware in various settings. So that includes restaurants, it includes meal delivery, institutional kitchens such as schools, healthcare facilities, corporate campuses, bulk meal delivery, food trucks, all of it. We want to really find out what works, what models work best for different scenarios around our county. If you have ideas about this, if you want to talk more or explore, please feel free to reach out to me directly for more information. And with that, I guess I'll check. Are there any other last questions that have come in? I can't see the list right now.
I don't see any.
Okay, then I think we've covered our event for today. I want to thank everyone for attending, and we'll sign off. Thank you very much.